Right, so this tutorial is an animation tutorial on how to bounce a ball, and I'm not choosing to go for a ball bounce because it's easy or anything like that. It's more just because it's a fantastically simple way of explaining timing and spacing and also workflow within Maya. Yes, Alt and F2 on the Linux machine, and normally you type in Maya. I happen to have Maya in my history, but normally you type in Maya and that's how you get to that. I just had a vision of someone saying to me, your tutorial was all good, but we couldn't even open Maya. Before we dive in, I'll just do a few basic setups, so setting Maya up for animation. So first of all, let's have a look at the preferences. So we need to go to animation, and there's actually two animation sections in the preferences. You've got one under display, which is all about keyframes and ghosting and things like that. That's not what we're looking for. We're after settings animation, and in there we're looking to change the tangents. So I'm just going to quickly explain what a tangent is. The intangent is here, so the way that this frame connects to that frame, and it's currently on auto, which is actually fine. We'll leave that on there. And then the out tangent is this one here, the way that it comes out of this keyframe and the spline leads down into that one. So the in tangent is the way that it comes in, and the out tangent is the way that it goes out of the keyframe. So I want my out tangent to be on stepped, and I want my default in tangent to be on auto. And stepped will look like this, the shape of a step, who knew? And auto will look like this. It'll just basically go in like that. And what stepped does, just in case you don't know, is it jumps. It means that there is no tweening, there's no spline in between two keyframes. It just jumps from one position to another. Very similar to the toggle hold key in After Effects. Or if you want to go back to cell animation, this is basically how you lay down your golden keys. So let's talk a little bit about how to set up hotkeys. So to get hotkeys up, it's under Settings, Preferences, and the Hotkey Editor. I'm one of those animators that likes to have my frame skip. I like to be able to flick back and forwards between frames, just like this really. But I like to have that control using the keyboard, and not sliding back and forwards with the mouse like I'm doing at the moment. So I'll go into the hotkey editor and I'm going to set up page up and page down as my back and forth, frame forward and frame back. Right, so it's really simple to do. You just take the Maya default and tell Maya to duplicate it. I'm just going to call this Gary's hotkeys. Fab. And down here I'll just tell it what I want. So I'm looking for the frame, something to do with frames. And you can see it here on animation playback. You've got next frame and you've got previous frame. So I always forget which order I like to have this in, but page down, I'm pretty sure that's the way I want it. It's muscle memory for me, so I'm not entirely confident that it is page down and page up in this order. But to go to the next frame, I'm going to go with page down, and then to go to the following frame, I'm going to go with page up. I'll just get rid of this menu. Right, so I'm going to test it and see if I did that right. I did, brilliant. And my fingers are confirming that now as well. That's how I like it to be. So I can just flip back and forwards like this. I used to do this in stop motion all the time. You'd be able to just flick back and forwards from one frame to another. And because I learned to animate like that, I really missed it, and I was really happy when I was able to put these hotkeys in. Right, so let's talk a little bit about auto keys, what they are and what they aren't. They are not the computer keying things and animating for you. It's simply the computer laying down keyframes where visible changes have happened to the rotations and transformations of the object that you're animating. So initially you do have to lay down some keyframes with the keyboard, but hopefully you only have to press the S key once in your entire scene, and then you're done. So I'll highlight the ball, and if you have a look at the channel box here, I'm just going to hit the S key, and there they go. If you don't have auto key on, when you move this, it's up to you to remember to hit the S key again. So if you watch, I'll hit the S key again and it lays down some keyframes, and you can see down here as well, I'll just jump back, you can see down here as well that when on frame 10 I hit the S key and a keyframe appears. The auto key will just do that for me, so it just means I don't have to think about it, so I can just move the ball. I'll just turn it on first, auto key down here, turn it on, so I can just move the ball around. And if you look down here where number 10 is, frame number 10, that keyframe appeared. Another place to have a quick look is up here on, it should be translate Y, it might be translate Z though. You see how a little red thing appeared next to it? That's because it only keyed translate Y, because the object was only moved on translate Y. Let me rotate it on the Y axis, the green. You can see Y is changing in the channel box in the top right, and when I let go, it only keys that. And what that means is that when we go into the graph editor, we have a relatively efficient graph editor that doesn't have tons and tons of stuff on it. If I just show you what happens when you hit the S key, you get, you need to actually move the ball. If I rotate it like that, drag it over here, move it up there, hit the S key, you just look at all these keyframes. All I did was move it up and rotate it, and I've got all these points. And to me, it's not that complicated these days, but I mean, look at it. I don't need all this scale information. I only need one of the rotates, and that's rotate Y. And all this mess is on my graph editor when I just don't need it. So let me get rid of that. Let me get rid of everything else that I just didn't need. Those two, I didn't need them. Get rid of them. All I really needed was these. And it's much tidier, it's much cleaner, especially when things start getting splined. You don't have crazy wires flying around everywhere. They actually make the graph editor look a lot scarier than it is. It's the way to do it, in my opinion. Use the auto key, which is down here, bottom right. You can turn it off and you can turn it on. Right, so let's chat a little bit about render cams. On an animated project like this, normally you wouldn't be setting up your own render cam. You'd normally instead be going into the project directory and referencing in a camera from a previous scene. So the camera will have already been set up and everything will be ready for you. You would simply go to create reference, and on whatever project it is, you'd go in there, you'd probably go into scenes, and there'll be maybe a subfolder called cameras, and it'll have the shot number that you need. You double click on that camera and then it would come in here and it would be here ready for you to use. We don't have that for this tutorial, so instead I'll just make one. Every camera should be called render cam, but that naming scheme might change depending on the project. And focal length, I'll just put it on 50 because I prefer 50, I think it looks quite nice. You can see the camera has appeared down here, and to look through it, there's two ways we can do it. You can either select the camera and click on look through selected, and then it'll look through it, or you can go to panels here and perspective, and render cam appears there in the menu. So I'll click on render cam. Over here there's a little blue dot in a box where my cursor is right now. If I click on that, it will create a film gate, which will give me a sense of where my actual barriers and borders are. So that is render cams in a nutshell. I'll just end this tutorial there, and then part 2 will begin actually animating.